Hello, world. Welcome. Let me just turn down the microphone a little bit here. It's looking a little bit loud. I believe this is better now. Man, am I excited to be here. We finally got this going. So I'm very excited that you have decided to join me today. I have a bunch of good information for you regarding the 7 income stream types. So this is going to be an event-packed and information-packed video where I'm going to be bringing you the 7 income stream types. If you don't know who I am, my name is Maxim Cruz. I am a licensed real estate broker as well as an investor, and have multiple businesses, and I love businesses. I think this is the future of the world, and with everything that is going in today, it's more important than ever to understand the 7 income stream types. So that is what we are talking about. 7 income stream types. Right? That is what we're going to be talking about. So, if you want to know what they are, stay tuned for the entire video. If you want to take notes, it could definitely help you. But I definitely have a download sheet down below. You can click the link on that and you can get the information that you need. And there are some great questions that will help identify exactly where you are with your streams of income. So, without further ado, I believe everything here is working on our end. We had some technical difficulties last time we tried to do this, but nevertheless, I believe it is working great right now. So, let's get right into it and let's go ahead and discuss the 7 income streams. Again, if you want to get the resources that come along with this, it's a multiple page download. You can go to this website right here, maximcruise.com/7 types of income, or you can click the link below and you should be able to download that right away. Okay, so first off, let's go ahead and jump into what the first stream of income is. And I think we are all familiar with this one. What is it? The first stream of income is called earned income. Okay? So earned income. Earned income, I believe every single one of us are familiar with exactly what it is, right? Pretty much it is the scenario where you take your time and you substitute it for money. Now, there's nothing wrong with this source of income. The only problem that I personally had and am still having with this source of income is what happens with time, right? We all have the same amount of time throughout the day, the 24 hours, right? That's what we have, 24 hours. Now, again, depending on where you are, and I don't know your scenario, right? You might start working at the age of 14, 15 years old. Some people start working a lot sooner. Some people start working a lot later. Just telling you kind of what I experienced, right? Start working around 14 or 15. Then whether you end up getting additional education or you do whatever you do, right? You go into your professional career, you work for 40, 50 years doing that, and then you're supposed to do this thing called retirement and kind of live off whatever you have saved in that time. Well, the problem that a lot of individuals are facing, and I think have faced throughout the generations, is that they soon find out that this doesn't really work, right? And another issue that people are having is that they're finding out that, hey, yes, it was great to work during those 40, 50 years, but now that I'm not working and maybe my retirement isn't looking that great, or I have additional medical expenses, X, Y, or Z, all of a sudden you're kind of in that trouble mode where, hey, I have to go back to work because, I don't have enough savings, right? And not only that, but people are actually living longer. So some people are budgeting for 10, 15 years of retirement, and that's a little bit unfortunate, I believe, personally. and then they're living much longer than they expect. There's people living to 100 years old, more and more. And I think as science advances and we take care of our mental health, physical health, spiritual health, all of that stuff, I think we're going to live more and more, right? So again, we kind of have to plan for that, but it's kind of hard to plan for time because we never know when that time is going to expire. But nevertheless, you're in that earned income stage where you're constantly replacing your time for money. Now, for some individuals that might be looking at this, you might say, hey, I'm an entrepreneur, I run my own business, I am that one individual that does everything, and that's totally okay. I've been there myself, and I know how that is. You might be on the other end where you say, hey, I'm an entrepreneur, I have 20 employees, which again, I've been there myself, but you have to be involved in all this stuff, right? Think of this as the earned income as what ends up happening if all of a sudden you have to go to Mars for, I think, whatever the time frame is, 9 months or 6 months it takes to get there, right? And then 9 months to get back. So if you're gone for a period of 2 years, what ends up happening with your income when you are gone, right? If that income isn't going to come in, doesn't matter if you run a business and have 20 employees, it doesn't matter if you are a salesperson, an entrepreneur, if you work for a big firm, if you're an attorney, if you're a janitor, right? What happens if you're not there for 18 months? Does that income continue to come in even though you're not trading your time for dollars? Probably not, right? And then at the end, I'm going to reveal something here as well, which is interesting as far as taxes go, and you might be surprised. So earned income, let's just remember that it's replacing your time for your dollars, okay? So let's go ahead and jump to the second source of income, which is profit income. Now, let me just write it on the board. And again, you could go and download your resource sheet. The website, as you see, is in the link below, or you should have a button right below to click on it there. So, profit income. This might be a lot simpler than a lot of people think, and I think at some point of our lives, if we've ever purchased something and then resold it, we might have experienced this profit income. In its bare essence, profit income is buying something for $1 and selling it for $2, right? So that's kind of in its bare essence. I know we can go much, much deeper into any one of these, and this could be an 80-hour discussion on each one of these 7 things. So 7 times, this could be 350 hours of us breaking down every single possibility. And I think this earned income one, which is replacing your time for dollars, I think 100 years wouldn't be enough, because we would have to write down all of the ideas of what we can do to replace our time in order to earn income. So again, I'm going to try to keep each one of these under about 5 to 7 minutes. So just bear with me. But again, let's go into and dive into the profit income. So again, this is kind of bare bones, right? A lot of people flip baseball cards. A lot of people buy sneakers before they come out. Some people do it with cars. Some people do it with houses. Some people do it with businesses. This is pretty much profit income. It's the scenario that you're buying something for X, $1, and then you're reselling it for Y, $2, and then the spread in between that, right? That is your profit. That's your profit income, okay? The question again, which I'm going to keep on going back to this number 1, because I'll tell you, out of these 7, I've probably experienced about 6 of them. I'd have to think about the 7th one. But I probably experienced all of them. And again, the issue that I found with myself that I was doing it wrong was that it all kept on coming to number 1, this earned income. Yes, I bought things for a certain price and then resold it for a higher price. Sometimes you don't make a profit. Sometimes you have a loss. But, when I've done that, I've gone ahead and say, hey, instead of this $1, I sell it for, 50 cents, right? So that gives me a negative profit, negative 50 cents, right? And that sometimes it has its advantages. When you're looking at tax purposes, man, this eraser is nasty today. So again, that's kind of bare bones. So you can have positive profit or you can have negative profit. I guess it's not profit if it's negative, but let's just call it that, right? So again, I've kind of been on both of these ends, and again, it was tied to that time scenario where if I wasn't present, then I wasn't getting this result. Okay, so that's scenario number 2, profit income, right? Let's go ahead and jump into scenario number 3. Okay, scenario number 3, interest income. So interest income, we've probably all experienced it at some point of our lives. If you have a bank account, if you have a credit card, if you have a loan on something, if you have a mortgage, whatever the scenario is of what you have going on kind of in your life, you probably experience this sort of interest income, right? You have what do you call it, the safety deposit boxes, you have CDs, you have all sort of these things where you put some money away or you lend some money in order to get interest. So again, I think, the generation at least that I grew up, I had a savings account to a certain extent, and you deposit $1,000 and you get like 25 cents at the end of the year or whatever the return is. And a lot of people still do this, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? Sometimes it's good to have cash sitting there for a future investment as long as you kind of have an idea of where that cash is going to be directed to. But having, $100,000 sitting at a bank or $1 million sitting at a bank at 1.75% yield might not really be ideal, because there's a lot more that you could do if you know how to do it. And again, I'm not selling you anything here today. We're just reviewing the 7 sources of income. But again, once you learn about business and all other sort of things of how money works, you could take that $100,000 and maybe make it into $1 million or something else, right? Which we'll get into a little bit later as we observe that, right? So again, this interest income, you get it from savings accounts, from CDs, any sort of securities like that. A lot of people do mortgages. So for example, we've been in situations where I am actually a lender on a property because a conventional bank will not lend towards that property. So that's what they call in the real estate market hard money lenders. So we'll go ahead and lend money to that investor. We have a collateral in back, which is pretty much the title, the deed to the house. We record a mortgage. If that flipper or that individual fails, then we essentially can get possession of the property and finish the renovations, all that stuff. But again, it kind of goes back and ties into the first one, right? The problem is if you're active being this bank, or if you're active moving your money around and seeing how you can increase your savings and having the money work, right? Maybe you're in a scenario that you could take $1 million and you could just put it in an interest-bearing account and you can generate income on that. But again, that income is kind of very, very low. Let's say it was 2%. 2% of $1 million is like I think it's like $20,000 or something like that. So it's not a lot of money. It's very, very little money. So that being said, that might not be the best investment that you're thinking of making, right? Or it might not be the best investment that you know how to make that money, right? So then it comes back to this earned income. If you're actively lending money and you have to be collecting and you have to be recording these mortgages, what ends up happening in the moment that you're not there? Well, this no longer happens. So if you run a business, quote unquote, where you're a lender or you're actively saving and you're doing these type of movements, just ask yourself, if I go away for the next 24 months, what ends up happening? Does this go away? If the answer is yes, then yes, you might be generating this income, but your activity comes through here. What happens when you run out of time? And that's the question that I kept on asking myself as I went through this exercise, okay? So let's go ahead and get into point number 4. Now, Point number 4, which is this thing right here, I guess it's number 4, not point, is a dividend income. Now, I'm not that familiar. I'm actually very, very unfamiliar with this type of income because, again, I am mostly in the real estate space. But obviously, you might have heard of individuals by the name of, Ray Dalio or Warren Buffett or Charlie Munger or even Tony Robbins. He has a great book called Money that explains a lot about kind of investing in the stocks market and dividends and bonds, ETFs, all that kind of good stuff. And I actually have a good friend, Paris Grant, that you might have want to check out. He has a podcast and he talks all about kind of investing in the stock market. And it's good to have someone, a friend like that you kind of pop ideas back and forth. So, make sure you check out his podcast if you get a chance. And I'll put a link for that down below. But I think it's good, just educational stuff. Or you can just go ahead and research what different stocks are and how you can get those benefits. But so let's talk a little bit. Again, I'm not an expert on dividends, but I do have a little bit of knowledge or at least understanding of how that works. Now, previous to this, when I was employed for a company and I did have an IRA and then a 401k and then a different type of IRA, and eventually I took all my money out and invested it into real estate. I kind of got to learn more about what this dividend income is. So I guess the easiest way to explain dividend income is think about investing into a company. So let's say a company like, XYZ, let's just use a real company. Let's say, Apple Computers, right? So Apple Computers, depending when you're watching this, I'm recording this video in 2020. Maybe if you watch this video 30 years from now, Apple Computers might not exist. I highly doubt it because I think technology is moving forward and technology companies, I think, have a long run. But who knows? We'll see. So anyways, Apple Computers, right? Let's say you buy a stock. A stock is a piece of the company. So you're buying a piece of their business. So pretty much what the company, Apple, is going to do is, I'm not sure how they pay out on dividends, and not every company pays out dividends. What they're going to do is say, hey, we had a great quarter, we had a great year, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to, pay you out a dividend, kind of a thank you or in appreciation for you investing into our company, since you're kind of a company holder, a small portion of kind of the profit that was generated. Again, I'm not versed on dividends 100%. I think there are some companies that even if they have losses, they still pay out dividends. I think there are some that are not. But again, you can do your own research and figure more about dividends. But I thought I would include it in here because the way that I want to kind of think about dividends is, more importantly than thinking of the actual money that you're getting, is what are you putting your money in, right? You're putting your money into a company. So when you put your money into a company, that company is either really, really good, which generates profit and generates income and then pays out a dividend, or it's really, really bad and doesn't generate profit, doesn't do what it's supposed to do, eventually goes out of business, and then you might lose your initial investment as well as any future dividends that you were expecting on getting, right? So there's risk in all of these. There's risk. I don't care if you have earned income and you have that secure job doing whatever you call secure is. You could step outside of your house and, get hit by a tree. I don't care if you have profit income. You can buy something for $1. All of a sudden, let's say plastics become illegal all over the entire world and you can no longer use plastic. Well, that million tons of plastic that you purchase is now kind of worthless per se. I don't know. The same thing with interest income, right? You can invest into something and that investment can go completely bad and then your interest can be very, very little or none. So hopefully you have some sort of collateral to recover your initial investment. But again, there's risk. So with dividends, like anything else, when you're investing or you're generating money or doing something with money, there's always risk involved. There's always kind of, risk involved in life. So let's go ahead and move on to the next income source, which is my favorite income source, right? And some of you might have this, and some of you might be experiencing this. This is called rental income, okay? So again, you can click on the website below in order to download your resource guide, or there's a link below so you could go ahead and download that. But let me speak on this topic a little bit, since I kind of have an idea of how this works, since I'm a real estate broker as well as a real estate investor, and we hold multiple units right now and we're actively growing our portfolio. So rental income, right? It does not matter what happens. It does not matter if I leave to Mars for 24 months, right? As long as the tenants that are there have a property to live on, that property is in good condition, the tenants are happy, right? They're going to be paying this rental income. Now, like anything else, there is risk involved in everything else. You might have scenarios where there's an economic crisis going on. Some tenants maybe lost their jobs, so they're having troubles paying their rent, etc. So there's all of that stuff. Now let me show you here where I personally made a mistake, a couple of mistakes. I mean, again, this rental income source, I could do probably, 1,000-hour course or 1,000-hour videos on this stuff, just talking about all the possible mistakes that I've learned from others, and other mistakes that I've learned from myself that others have also done, so you could avoid that, and I think that will be a whole video series on its own. But rental income, right, in its bare essence, again, I kind of explained it. When people live in some sort of real estate, we hear that human beings have three needs, which is, food, water, and shelter. So if you're any in one of those three businesses, you're probably fairly, stable, because human beings like that source of stuff. So again, that's the shelter business. The rental income is the shelter business. So when somebody rents a unit, right, as long as you're providing that, there's property management involved, there's upkeep involved. Things go wrong, things break, there are leaks, there are X, Y, and Z. I could go down the list of what happened, right? But one of the issues that I had when I first started is understanding that this rental income, it needs to be managed, right? Not only on a property level as far as maintenance, getting all that stuff taken care of, but also kind of on a professional level where, in some ways you kind of have to direct your attention and saying, hey, where is my time worth it? If a tenant calls me at midnight saying their lights are off, or their toilet is clogged, or whatever, is it worth my time to pick up the phone and call a plumber, call an electrician, do that, follow up on that, follow up with the tenant? That might be a couple of hours of your time, plus the stress, plus your mental attention going to solve that problem, versus having a property manager that at the end of the month, you get the report from the property manager, you kind of check in and say, hey, what happened here? I see there's a $400 charge, and they kind of explain it to you. They said the solution, X, Y, and Z, and you kind of got it resolved. Now again, this could be on a very, very micro level. On a macro level, if you're managing, thousands of units, it's kind of hard to really look at all this stuff, but it's always good to, at least on a monthly basis, make sure you're checking your rent roll, your expenses, what's going on, what's happening, kind of have a future plan for expenditures, things that have to happen. So again, this is a whole other video that I can go and do hours and hours on that, but this is another source of income, okay? Rental income. So let's go ahead and get to number 6. And again, some of you might have experienced this sort of income, right? Capital income. So there's a couple of ways that you can understand capital income. Probably the easiest way to understand it is very, very similar to this profit income one, but I'm going to put it in the sense of a real estate property. Let's say it's a home. for whatever amount of time you buy a home for, let's say $300,000, and then whatever 20 years later that home is worth let's say $600,000, right? Or you buy yourself a very, very fancy automobile, and I'm gonna totally mess this up since I can't draw for a thing. I don't know what that is, but it's a really, really cool automobile. It's a collectible. You buy it for $50,000, and 10 years from now, it's worth $75,000, right? Or you somehow figure out how to go to the Louvre, buy the Mona Lisa, which she's always looking at you, independent of what's going on. Sorry, Leonardo da Vinci, I have no drawing skills like you, but you buy the Mona Lisa for I don't know, $10 million, and then you resell it for $15 million. I know that this looks similar to profit income. The difference is this capital income is time. So there's a much larger time gap here versus in this scenario, you're buying something today for $1, you're selling it tomorrow for $2. So it's very, very quick, right? This capital income is over time. A lot of companies, for example, they measure on, hey, we're looking to become a $100 million company, so they start off with, I don't know, let's say $1 million loan, or they start off with joint ventures, or they have sharks or other things that lend them money, but then they go into this much higher valuation, right? That's kind of that capital income that they get, but it's based on time. It's a much longer time frame. I think this one is easily understandable, kind of in this collectible category, because again, as time goes by, we humans kind of value things that may be rare, or things that don't exist, or there's only one of them. It's a highly collectible item, so over time it's worth more and more. So again, kind of like having a savings account where you're getting this interest. You have this asset, this physical asset. It might even be a business, it might be something. You're getting this capital income over time, which is further down the road. So again, I told you that I've experienced kind of 6 out of the 7 out of these. I wouldn't say I've had a lot of like collectibles. I've had capital incomes on, which was called capital gains on real estate, which could be similar to profit income. But again, as you start to look at this, in the resources guide, there's actually a few questions that I went ahead and put in there to help you identify which category is that income source that you believe that you have going into, and then that will help you do it. So the final income source, and don't tune away because I do have a bonus right here which is gonna allow you to really understand on how successful people have gotten to the position that they've gotten, and how I'm trying to do the same thing, and you might be trying to look for the same answer. So first, let's jump into number 7. Okay, number 7. This is called royalty income. All right, royalty income. And I think the easiest way for me to explain royalty income, which I don't have any of that yet, but now that you know the income sources, you can maybe start thinking about this, is think about, for example, McDonald's, right? I can't draw the Mona Lisa, but I guess I could draw a McDonald's fairly well, if you call that fairly well, right? So think about a McDonald's, or think about a brand. There you go. We'll call it brand Nike. Or think about individuals like Oprah, or for example, Tony Robbins. And whether you like Tony Robbins or any other individual that you look towards motivation, not motivation because he doesn't like to consider himself a motivational speaker, but kind of these trainers, coaches that get you to the next point of their life, right? Royalty income. Every time McDonald's sells a hamburger, I don't care if it's in India, I don't care if it's in Iceland, I don't care if it's in Japan, if it's in the United States, if it's in any country that there's a McDonald's, they get royalty income. It might be, I don't know, 1/100th of a penny. It might be some very, very minuscule amount, but trust me, it adds up. Same thing with a brand like Nike, right? Every time that they put their name on something or they brand something, they're getting that royalty. Same thing with kind of Oprah and Tony Robbins. For example, Tony Robbins has a licensing product where he has certified coaches, right? So essentially, they are tied to his name, but those coaches, every time that they get a client, maybe they pay him a one-time royalty, maybe they pay him reoccurring royalties. I don't know. I'm not in that business. I'm focused on real estate. But again, that's kind of the royalty income. How does your name, for example, Michael Jackson or Alex Rodriguez or I don't know, Jennifer Lopez or other these individuals, how does your name become this brand that it's worth something, right? This royalty kind of thinking, right? So again, in the resources guide, you kind of can go ahead and think about all this stuff. And when you think of this, I guess royalty income, you can also add things like franchise, right? This would be kind of the easiest way to think of it. But in the scenario, don't think of being the franchisee. Is that the word? Yes, I think it's franchisee, where you're the individual that is operating the McDonald's, all that stuff. No, think of being the actual franchise owner. You own the way that the business is done. You own kind of the supply chain management. You have the context. You have how the processes, how the products work, how things come together, right? Think of it in that scenario, and then as the individuals buy your systems, they pay you a royalty based on what they produce, right? So that's kind of how these are. So let me go ahead and show you again what the 7 sources of income are on one single slide. So again, the first one was earned income, replacing your time for dollars. The second one was profit income. You're buying something for $1, selling it for $2. The third one was interest income. That's essentially lending out money and getting income on that. The fourth one is dividend income. That's kind of associated more with the stock market and buying a piece of a company. And when that company generates a profit, you get a piece of the profit. The fifth one is rental income. So any sort of real estate where you have tenants, whether it's living premises, like multifamily properties, or you have commercial premises and you have these big national retailers that pay you rent, all of that stuff. Number 6 was capital income, which we talked about kind of having these collectible items and they go up in value over time. And then the last one was royalty income, which was kind of this franchise concept of doing that. So the question is, how is it possible for individuals like Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, all these other names which we could go on the Forbes 100 list and get 100 of them, what is it that they really do, right? Do they think in their heads, let me go out and get another job for me to get more of this? Let me go ahead and sell more Microsoft for me to get more of this. How do I start a lending business that people actually pay me interest, right? And again, I think in today's world, you could see more and more, for example, a way to do interest income. You could see a lot of individuals from Grant Cardone to Tony Robbins to, I don't know, I can go on with names and names of technology providers where they'll sell you an information product for $9.97 or 3 payments of what do they put it, like $347 or something like that. Is that even right? Yeah. So again, $9.97 one time or 3 payments at $347 will be something like I don't know, 1,031. Maybe I got that right. But you see what I'm saying here? It'll be more. So this is kind of that interest income, quote unquote, type of income where because you're delaying out collecting all at once, you save some money, but if you pay it in 3 payments, you got to pay a little bit more. Usually these numbers, I have no idea what they are, but that's kind of a scenario. Thinking about dividend income, like how do you generate dividend income? What type of companies do you invest in? It's very cool to follow Warren Buffett and very interesting to follow some of his speeches because he actually says, the average investor, even he himself, holds very, very little stock, kind of diversified stock. And we're almost getting into what this power thing is, right? He's very intrigued on one thing, one lane that he knows, one lane that he kind of is the master of, right? He doesn't pay attention to Microsoft and what they're doing. He doesn't pay attention to what McDonald's is doing and how they make all of the stuff that they're doing, right? I almost said the word, right? He's really, really understanding his category and his lane that he's running into, right? The rental income, how do we do all that stuff? Well, the answer to this is the power of focus, right? And it sounds kind of mystical in a sort of way, or maybe foolish. And for a long time, maybe you've been looking for this thing and you've been saying, hey, I need more income. I need more income. What do I do? What kind of things can I do? Well, you have to focus. And that's one thing that I realized that I was doing wrong for a long, long time. I was focusing on generating more income. But what type of income? It doesn't matter if you're focusing on generating rental income, if you're going to have to be there in order to manage the units, if you're going to have to be there to collect the rents, if you're going to have to be there to check on the subcontractors, if you're going to have to be there every time a unit vacates and you're going to have to rent it, you're going back with this time dilemma, right? That was mistake number one. Number two, and number three that I did, I kept on saying, I need more, but this remains the same. How can you do more in the same amount of time, right? You can hire more people, you could do this, X, Y, Z, but you only have 24 hours. You can't have all these 7 sources of income if you're only focused on replacing your time for dollars. That's why technology has allowed for systems to take over, right? But you have to envision that. You have to focus on what is it that you want. And look, there's nothing wrong with having a job. There's nothing wrong with having earned income and saying, okay, this is my plan. For the next 12 months, I have this paycheck. This paycheck is going towards, paying my bills and doing X, Y, and Z, keeping food on the table. But for 4 hours a day, I'm going to focus my attention on developing myself. Learning more about profit income, learning more about how can I take this $1, convert it into 2, and then over time, as I get better, as I learn, then we could take $100, make it into $200, take $1,000, make it into $2,000, take $10,000, make it into $20,000, and this moves forward, right? I'm not telling you how to do it. I'm not telling you go out and buy baseball cards and do that because I have no idea how that works. Even in real estate, I'm not going to tell you to go out and buy real estate and flip it. That's a risky game. You have to study the market. You have to learn this. It takes time, right? But just, time is short. Before you know it, a year is going to go by. 6 months is going to go by. 10 years is going to go by. Go ahead and ask yourself, independently of how old you are, this time last year, what were you doing? This time last year, what were your goals? This time last year, did you have a vision of what you are today? If you did and you're not there, did you lose focus? Were you too busy with all these things going on right here that you lost focus? Right? Why is focus so important? Focus is so important because we're so distracted. And the more distracted that we are, the less we can focus. And that's why you see a lot of these individuals, not replacing their time for money. They're replacing their time for value. They go and get very, very good in one or two things, primarily one thing that they're very, very good at. And the second thing that they become very good at is in communication, right? Communication is huge, but why are we not taught this stuff? Why is our school systems, you know, built the way that it's built? Because if this, I'm getting off topic, and I hate to get off topic, but I have to do it. The school system is built to make us into this, to believe that we have to keep on replacing our time for dollars. And that is not the only way. There are other better ways. So, with all that being said, hopefully this video will encourage you to at least sit down for 5 minutes out of the whole entire week. Do it, early Sunday morning. Do it late Wednesday night. Whenever you have some free time, go ahead and download the resource guide. There's a bunch of books in there. Oh, let me actually talk about those books. But in that resource guide, there's a few questions that you can answer really to value yourself. And then there's a whole printout that you could print out, or you could just have on your phone or do whatever you want. And you can kind of see this thing right here. And then maybe as you're doing activities and you start to acknowledge and be aware of what you're doing, you can ask yourself, am I keeping on doing this? How much more can I keep on doing this, right? How do I get into this? How do I get into this, right? Royalty income. This is a very, very interesting one. Think about it, right? How can you create something? You have value in yourself. How can you create something that can be worth something? 20 years from now, 10 years from now, heck, 5 years from now, maybe you're very, very good at your job. How can you have that proprietary information which only you have? Because there's nobody that could do what you do the way that you do it, right? So if that's the scenario, how can you turn that information into royalty, something that you're getting a little bit every single day that comes in based on a system that you have designed that's only yours, right? And again, this might take time. Companies like McDonald's, Nike, Oprah, Tony Robbins, these didn't come overnight, right? This takes time. That's why it's probably all the way at the bottom of the list. Now, what's funny is, if we look at something called taxes, right? This right here is the highest tax rate. And as you go down the list, the taxes kind of go down, which is, I don't want to say it's wrong, but it's just weird when you think about it, right? All of us are trained to do this, to go and get that education, improve ourselves, get that job, do whatever it is that we do to replace our earned income, right? To replace our time for this earned income, right? That's what we're trained to do. But yet, this is the highest tax category, earned income. It's funny because you see a lot of these corporations that have these CEOs that, quote unquote, only make, a couple of $100,000 a year. Why? Because they have attorneys and they have professionals that advise them saying, hey, guess what? If your company makes $10 million a year, don't report it all as earned income, right? Put yourself a salary. And again, talk to your tax professional. This is not tax advice. I'm just telling you information that the way that I understand it. But again, I have no idea what your scenario is. And, you should talk to a tax professional that can better guide you. And if you want a referral, I can definitely send you to somebody that I know. She's my wife, so she does a fairly good job of making sure that we pay the least amount of taxes that we legally have to. So again, earned income, that's the highest tax category. As you go down, a lot of these categories, a lot of the times, that's why you're seeing these large companies pay zero in taxes, right? Because they don't have a lot of earned income. They structure it in a different way. Yet we work hard and harder and harder, and we keep on putting in our time in order to get more money, and yet the taxes keep on screwing us over. They keep on taking more out of our pockets, right? So again, the taxes, that's a whole other video, which my wife and I will be doing a series soon talking about this stuff. But, just take the time and sit down and ask yourself, right? Where is my income coming from, right? And if you keep on doing this, what happens when you run out of this? If you're doing this right now, putting in time to get money, putting in time to get money, what happens when your time runs out? That money stops. Okay? That's the only answer I have for you. When your time runs out, that money stops. How can you guarantee that when your time runs out, the rental income is still coming in, right? The interest income is still coming in. Your dividend income is still coming in to your heirs, to your people that are coming in. If you have a company, it's still being profitable, right? If you have capital income, how does that keep on coming in, right? If you have royalty income, even if you're dead, like Michael Jackson or another artist or whatever, they continue to get royalty income every time their song is purchased or played or filmed in a movie. I don't know what the scenario is. I don't know how that works, right? All I know is that they get some sort of royalty income even though they're not here, right? So why are we all stuck here? And again, the average millionaire and the average billionaire, they don't have 7 sources of income. They have multiple sources of income, but they have 7 types of income. And guess what? When their profit income isn't so good, maybe their rental income is really good. When their dividend income isn't really good because the economy is not doing so hot, maybe their interest income is really good because there's more people or more companies looking to borrow money, right? Maybe when their royalty income is not so good, right, their profit income is very high, right? Because they're selling more and more of their products, but yet they're not getting this royalty income yet because they haven't generated enough duplicatable systems in order to do that. So again, you see this varies. So this whole 7 sources of income that we've always been told that the average millionaire has 7 sources of income, and you should focus on the different sources of income, and this is how you get them. You should buy 7 different properties, or you should buy 7 different cars, or you should, buy 7 different businesses or do all that stuff. That's not true, right? It's the type of income. The type of income is more important than the number of incomes, because if you have 7 jobs, which I've known individuals that have had 4 jobs. I haven't met someone yet that has had 7 jobs, like at the same time, like 4 part-time jobs. If you have 7 part-time jobs, man, I feel for you, and hopefully this video can help you start to think a little bit differently. And the books, right? In the resource guide, there's a few books that really helped me out. I know a lot of people have read Rich Dad, Poor Dad and the Cash Flow Quadrant. The Cash Flow Quadrant was huge, right? Understanding how money flows, understanding why businesses exist, how businesses look at cash completely different than the consumer does, right? There's another book in there, The Richest Man in Babylon. That kind of teaches you this whole idea, like start to think differently. Also, Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, right? It's an awesome book. And I continue reading it on an annual basis, and maybe I should read it more frequently just to kind of grab everything that's meant in there. But these resources hopefully are there to help you get what it is that you need. So with all that being said, like I said, I have nothing to sell you. Sorry if you thought this was a sales video, but go ahead and download the resource guide. Get the information that you want. If you become very, very successful, call me up. This is my website. You can get my contact information there. Call me up. We can go grab a nice dinner at whatever restaurant that you want. Yeah, that's about it. So have an awesome day. Have an awesome afternoon. Have an awesome life. Go and get your 7 type of income streams, and I'll see you on the next video.